So the question is, what is freedom? The dictionary definition for it is the condition of being free, the power to act or speak or think without externally imposed restraints. You can get a similar definition when you Google it. But is it really the right definition? Is freedom the ability to do something that you want without any restraint? Right now, in the world that we live in, then that means that if this is the definition, then each of us don't have real freedom, and we don't have unlimited right, because we can't do certain things because there's law to tell us not to do it for societal, like, welfare. However, then the question is, up to when is our right ours, and when does it stop being something that we have the power to do? And that's why there's movement to expand certain freedom of this, freedom of that, freedom to do this, freedom to do that, and there's so many lawsuits about it nowadays. So that got me thinking about freedom again. If this is actually the true definition, because it seems like this is a definition that people goes by. Since I'm a visual learner, this is what made it clear for me. So imagine that this is a human in a cage, and this is a land that is a mix of thorny and barren ground, along with a patch or a little bit of like a really Eden-like land with plenty of fruit, water, veggies, stuff to eat, anything that you would be able to satisfy your hunger and to provide you enjoyment. Then do you think that the person is free? In this scene, what if outside of the cage there's like plenty of things to choose from that you desire, that you would ever want? Then are you free? What if those things that you desire are actually just mirages, stuff that are very evil and bad, lurking to harm you in disguise? Now, are you free? What about now? That might be an easy question to answer. However, what if I say that this person inside is content to be within this boundary, but this person outside, like, is not content? He has to go outside. He has to bypass the boundary somehow. He needs to try this, whatever goodness outside that he thinks is outside, and go outside. He has to do it. He can't stay in here. Absolutely not. Then who is free? I would like you to kind of like just take a time, if you haven't decided already, to kind of like just go through it and decide when is it that the person is free. To me, in this scenario, they're not free. Here, they're definitely not free, because it seems like there's just stuff outside of the cage that if I were in there, I would want to go out and try, right? Because in here, I already said there's some kind of like barren and thorny ground in here too, and this small patch of like good land that is really fruitful, yeah, it may satisfy me for a while, but look at all the stuff out here. However, if I know that they are bad and that they will kill me, maybe I can think, oh, I'd rather stay in the cage. The cage might be a thing that protects me and not something that like it's keeping me in. So maybe then I'll start to work at it and like till the land and make it fruitful. However, I still can't say that I'm 100% free, although I would be very, very content to stay in the cage, but I wouldn't be free. To me, this person is free because there's no cage for him. He has the power to choose. He has the choice that God gave him to choose to listen to God's word and stay inside, to enjoy the whatever God has given him, to work, even though it's a cursed land, so he has to work to make the barrenness and the dry land become fruitful. But God is a good God who will give him rain and seed, who will make his tree grow, do all the things that he can't enforce. Like, he can't force a tree to grow, he can't force the rain to come. And God gave him a brain, and he can do all of that, and to just enjoy the land that God gave him, and to work and to be fruitful with what God has given him. That person is free to choose to do that, or to choose to go outside, and they can choose to do both. However, and so that person is free. However, in the case that I said that that person has to go outside and try this and that, and then become kind of like a slavery to it, a bondage to it, because he has to go outside. He can't even stay inside, even though he knows that it's better for him inside. You know, like when a person is addicted to cocaine, he knows it's bad, but he still do it. Same thing with my dad. He knows that smoking is not good for his health or for his children's health, but by now he says that he can quit, but he can't. He tried and he failed. You know, like he doesn't even want to go to a counselor to help. I don't know why, but he just can't. He's like addicted to it now. Sexual sins. I have to have another girl. This relationship isn't working out. I'm lonely. I'm sad. I need to find another person who can satisfy me, who can make me feel good. They go from one relationship to another. They can't stay with one person even if they wanted to. I mean, yeah, it can be enjoyment for a while, but when it reaches the point where it consumes you, and then who is free anymore? The person who chooses to stay in, or the person who have to get out? I think it's clear the person who have to get out, even though they can get, like, they have a choice. It's their choice to get out. They're the one who's enslaved. That's why whenever something holds your heart and your thoughts, you become slaves to it. So you can either choose to make yourself a slavery or a slave to righteousness, or you can make yourself a slave to sin. And you can choose to submit yourself to God, or you can submit yourself to your fleshly desire, and that it makes you become someone who is under the power of Satan. And this is the condition that we live in right now. God doesn't have a cage for us. He sets boundaries for us, and he expects us to learn those boundaries and follow it, because it will bring us most fulfillment. I think the problem with human is that we're in this stage, but we think that we are in this stage because we think that those restrictions are infringement to our freedom, that we can't get out. The thing is that there are Christians in people in here who knows that this is the state that they're in, that they're content to be in this white box, that they're content to till the ground in here and make the Garden of Eden grow where they are at, and that they're trying to tell other people who thinks that they're in this state to don't go out there, don't try those things, because it's poisonous and it will kill them. The question then is, why do I think that this is a definition of freedom? This choice, and why do I think that staying in this boundary is the right thing to do? And I'll attempt to answer it next. So it's through me looking at various sources, and I looked at some non-Christian sources for what freedom is, and I looked at some Christian sources for what freedom is, and I reject the non-biblical source, and I felt that the Christian source makes the most sense and answers the most questions. Maybe because of my Christian background, but it also fits in most with what I've seen in other people's lives and what I read and in my personal experience. So I'll start off with the non-Christian source and go through it. This is the website, and he says he has the same question: is freedom the right to do anything I want? And he basically answers it by saying that he says correctly that religious systems or traditional systems have tried to answer it, but because there are so many different religious systems or belief systems, they can sometimes conflict with each other, and they don't answer anything 100% clearly. And so he then says that outside of the religious and traditional belief system, there is a point of reference, and that is property rights. And that it is enforced when everyone has 100% control over their own property, because they are have 100% control over their own property, meaning there are no public ownership involved and all private ownership. Then that means that everyone is then 100% free to do whatever they want with their property, and is also 100% not free to infringe on anyone else's property. And he asserts that property rights are human rights. And so then those are what he asserts. And if I was a non-Christian, I think I would pretty much be tempted to agree with this as being one of the clearer of the definition of freedom, because without it, there is no clear guideline. There's no limit to when can someone infringe upon our freedom, or when we can infringe upon another person's. This is the clearest answer. However, it does have a few problems, and I'll go over those problems next. So one problem is this phrase, that this freedom exists when every individual has 100% control over his own property. So the question is, what is property? And he defined it here. You are your own property. Your body is your property. However, he also says that when you work for someone else, the money you receive is your property. And if you can exchange certain things for money, and money equate property, and you equate property, then doesn't that mean your body and a whole person can equal money? It can be exchanged around. Doesn't that lead to the issue of slavery? I think this is a very dangerous idea, and I reject it just because of that, using his words against himself. And so this phrase doesn't really make sense. They can do whatever they want with their property, even selling it, and it then become another person's property. I actually don't accept that. And so in that scenario, how can there be human right? When human becomes a property, there is no human right. And right now he add another clause to have such a world where freedom is clearly defined. That means it has to be a freedom where everything is individually owned, privately owned, no publicly owned. Right now in our world, I can't even think of a place where everything is privately owned. So to clearly define freedom in his, like according to this definition, first of all, is problematic. Second of all, it's not realistic to apply it to the world that we live in today. So his proposal to change for this definition, I don't think it's useful because it's not applicable to the world today. And those are the two big things that I can see as being problems with this. I will now go and talk about the one big thing that I as a Christian see. And from a Christian perspective, this whole article has a big problem of the similar thing. Humans cannot be considered property because fundamentally God said that he created us in his image. And if he created us, and even according to this definition, because his mind is at work in it and he created us, we are his property. We are not our own property. So it's just there you have it. We are God's property, so we can't really say that we are free. The problem with freedom comes when people think that they aren't subject to anyone and that they don't have to answer to anyone, that they are their own God, and that's why they reject the God of the Bible, because humans and our sinful nature wants to be our own God. We don't want to answer to God, we don't want to listen to God, and we only want to listen to ourselves. However, they don't know that when they want that, they're actually under the influence of another God. So what do I mean when I say that Christians view freedom as being as choosing to stay in God's box and cultivating it? It can be best explained through this next website that I took part out of, and I'll go through it first. So this website, the author actually explicitly defined that freedom is that we have the freedom to choose our master. What people don't realize is that we all have a master, whether we like it, we acknowledge it or not. Every human have a master. And the things that enslave us, it may not be sinful, but it is the desire and focus of us that is what we are enslaved to. And what we are enslaved to, we give our freedom away to. And what we are enslaved to, they are our master. Again, it's here that it's stated clearly, we become slaves to whatever we choose to obey. And so, you can be a slavery to yourself, your desires, your sin or to God, and because God is a God of righteousness, we are then slaves to righteousness. And this is just a short story that I thought was interesting. I don't know if it's real, and I didn't look it up. However, it's interesting. And Matthew 6:24 says that no one can serve two masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. Similarly, you cannot serve both God and money. And so, either God is your master, or money, or yourself is your master. And those are, money and stuff like that are actually from the devil, Satan. And so the question is, why be a slave to righteousness? And just on September 4th, I got this email, and it was interesting. It said, I will live in perfect freedom because I try to obey your teachings. And I didn't really understand it, because I was thinking, well, how can I be in perfect freedom when I try to obey God's teaching? And after I meditated on it for a while, I understood, because of all of these, because we are born with a sinful nature and we desire sinful things, we are bound to it from birth. We grow up in a society where we're filled with desires and lusting after other things. We're sinful from birth, even. And so we want to sin. Sin is our comfort food. It's our guilty pleasure, if I can say that. And so when we try to obey God's teaching because God is righteous, like, we are actually breaking the chains off of ourselves one by one and living. And that's how we attain perfect freedom, when we can break off all the chains, when God gives us the strength to break it off. And through His Word, we know how to break it off. We live in perfect harmony with Him. We listen to Him. We have communion with our God. When before, in our sinful state, we can't have that direct relationship with God. We can't hear Him, and we can't understand Him. When we accept Him as our Lord and Savior, and that communication, we can hear Him clearer. And then we can follow Him better, and we can start then to break off the chains that are binding us to sin. And that's how we attain freedom, perfect freedom, from all of our sinfulness and desires and problems. And then another question that came up when I was reading this is, why do we have to have masters? Like, why can't we be without master? And the answer then became clear just right now when I was showering, that we are this way because we are created in God's image. He is a God of love, and He created us so that He can have something and someone to love. And you know how we get mad at injustice? When we see something is wrong, we get really mad, and we feel, even at a young age, we feel that there has to be a right, like some kind of righteousness, some kind of judgment for bad things, and we want stuff to be fair. Similarly, that's a characteristic of God. He can't stand wrong thing. He can't stand to see injustice. He is a just God, and He also is a loving God. He wants to love. He wants to share His joy, His sorrow, things like that. And that's because we are created in His image. We too have those kind of feeling, those kind of drive. We want someone to love. And so the same way, we And so, because he is our creator, he wants us to love him, but then he gives us a choice to choose to love him or not, to choose to love him or to choose to love the world and worldly things, to follow him or to follow our own sinful desire and just be bound forever in our ruined bodies, in our imperfect bodies. And so, like, another example is he's like a loving parent who laid down ground rules saying you shouldn't run out in the street, or you shouldn't play with fire, you shouldn't put your hand on a hot stove or on any stove, just in case it is hot and you'll burn yourself. And I don't want you to burn yourself. I don't want you to hurt. It might satisfy your curiosity for a while. Fire might not hurt if you touch it really quick and flip it at it really quickly on the very top. And if it doesn't burn or doesn't go out of control, or if you don't hurt yourself, it might be fun to look at and play with. But if something goes wrong, there will come a time where a big gust of wind blow or something like that can hurt you, or you make a mistake and you'll fall. Eventually that will happen. If you play with fire, you'll get burned. So those are guidelines that people don't understand, and they think that it's an infringement to their freedom. However, they have the right to choose. The only thing that God is saying is that please choose wisely. Listen to me. I know best. I created you. I created earth. I created human. I created society. I know how people work. I know what makes them happy, and I know what will drive them to ruins, to ruin lives. And I know what kind of activities you should be engaged in to give you most purpose for your life, to give your life most meaning and for you to be most happy. And that is to serve other people and since you know of this truth, spread it on. Tell other people to not do things that I say to them not to do, so that they don't hurt themselves. It may be pleasurable for a moment, but it's not worth the pain that comes after it. It may be pleasurable for the moment, but it's not worth dying for. Stay within the confinement that I have. It's there and it's invisible, but don't think of it as bigotry, or don't think of it as being narrow-minded. Think of it as a guide so that you can be safe. Yes. And so many people confuse that. They want to cross the line and we're pulling them back, but they don't know why we're pulling them back, and they don't believe that we are pulling them back to keep them safe, because they think that those boundaries that are set is there to limit their freedom. The thing is that they've always had a choice, and God gave everyone a choice. The thing is that we in our love don't want to see them suffer, especially for eternity, and so we're pulling them back. It's a sad but true fact of the Christian life, and that's why when I was a young Christian, when people get mad at me for doing the stuff that I do, I sometimes get offended, and I just basically say, you know what, it's your own life. God gave you a choice, and if you choose that way, then so be it. I already tried, and you reject me, so be it, And I had that kind of flippant attitude because they were rejecting me and my good effort to stop them. However, the thing is that God said that they reject him first, and no servant is greater than his master. He went through it, or knows, Yeah, something like that. Student better than teacher, servant better than master, something like that. But he went through the same thing. And so when I think about how he went through it suffered through it silently, and still loved them with a really deep, like, love, I felt really ashamed that I can be so flippant about it. And sometimes when I see like people in pain, like at church service, they like show it on videos and stuff, and I really, like, I look at it and I'm like, and people just in like destitution, they're poor, they're needy, and they're just without hopelessness, and not like no happiness at all. And I just feel so sad because I look down and I look at them and I'm like, I wonder how God is feeling right now when he looked down and he see his creation suffering needlessly like this. You know, if we can just get more people to just cultivate the land, make it plentiful, and just work with what he gave us. And yeah, it's a cursed land, but he is good. He gives the rain, and he provide for the birds in here. You know, he'll provide for us too. And I just think of how he must be feeling, seeing so many people try to climb out when those boundaries weren't meant to keep them out of something good, but to keep the bad stuff from getting into them. And well, I guess the conclusion of that is that freedom is just a choice to choose. And all these things about freedom, to have gay marriage, to have open marriage, to have what was that called, polygamy, stuff like that, is not an issue of freedom. Everyone has the right to choose. The thing is that God is the one who gave us that freedom, and he says we shouldn't be involved in those kind of relationship. Eventually, though, the world will come to a place where it will do things that are completely against what God wants it to do, and that is the time that he'll come. And we'll just have to try our best until then. So I think what's more important is that we don't go after like open marriage or gay marriage or polygamy that much, because those are stuff that we should have a voice in, because we don't want our nation to go that route, to become godless, because it will have its effect. If a person go that way, they'll get poisoned and they'll get killed. And if a whole nation go that way, a whole nation will get corrupted and get killed. And nation have rise and fall, and we just don't want that to happen to the nation that we live in. However, eventually it will go that way, because that's what is written in the Bible. That's what's going to happen in the last days. So I don't think that we can stop the inevitable. We should spend time on it, but not our full energy. Most of our energy should be talking about God, about the gospel, about sin, and how sin is not because God is preventing them to do something that will give them happiness. He is preventing it because it will bring destruction. It might be happy and enjoyable for a time, but it will bring in destruction. However, in the end, he does give them the choice to choose. And basically, if they choose sin, they reject him. They are choosing to serve the master of lies and destruction instead of the master of righteousness. Um, and so I think that's basically what I wanted to say about freedom. If I think of any more, I guess I'll add notes to this slide. But that's, I think, what I understand of freedom up to now. And I'll just go through the timeline of what actually made me sit down and do all of this. So when I started the YouTube channel, I'm not sure when, but a few years back, I actually was thinking about this topic of freedom already, but I wasn't like, there's no concrete definition, and I really didn't understand what freedom meant, even to me as a Christian. I keep on hearing that freedom is to not sin, but like, sin is something that God says, like, God tell me not to do this, and when He give me a guideline, how can it be that I'm fully free? And that connection didn't bridge, didn't click in my mind. And I actually stopped thinking about it until about a month ago, when I talked with my friend's friend, and the topic of polygamy and stuff like that came up. And then when I thought about those kind of things, and then I wonder why people want to be equal. Like, why are they all talking about equality in marriage? Like, oh, if the heterosexual can do it, then why can't this group and this group and this group? And what is it that limit our freedom to choose that lifestyle? And why do I feel that it's wrong? Stuff like that. I thought about those, and then, like, it's sexual freedom, right? It's the freedom to choose who you want to be with and who you want to spend your life with. So the topic of freedom came up again, and I feel like all of those polygamy, all of those lifestyle, is not about equality. It's not. Well, it is about equality, because if freedom is not defined by God, it will be a question of equality. However, freedom is defined by God. So then the question is, why shouldn't they do that? Like, why does God not limit their freedom to not, or limit human freedom to not pursue those kind of relationship that He favors, or He only accept the lifestyle of a heterosexual relationship and reject the rest? So then I started thinking about that, and when I on September 4th, I got like this email. It was in my devotional, and when I read this line, I got more confused, because I'm like, so how can we live in perfect freedom when we try to obey God's teaching? And so those questions just like kind of jump around in my mind. And then on September 4th, I then also did the polygamy thing. And then when doing that, I researched on the question. And then I researched and I thought, and some of the answer came to me. And I was able to piece together some stuff, but not fully. Actually, September 4th was when the email came to me, but September 6th, which is yesterday, is when I started to make the video and did research, and so some of the answer came to me, but the video I made for that one was super long. It was like 40 something minutes, and so and it was like a lot of jumping around and a lot of scrolling, and I didn't think I made my point very well, so then I kind of slept on it. And today, like my pastor, this is the link to the video, and he was talking about freedom too, and he explained it a little bit more. And then when I was in the shower just before, or when I saw his video and he was talking about freedom and explaining it, then I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, oh my goodness, I think God really wants me to do this, because this subject came up in my devotional, when I was making the video on polygamy, in today's sermon, and it's just like, oh, it's happening again, like God's trying to tell me to talk about this, to piece it together. And when I'm in the shower, I was showering, and then I just thought about it more, and I'm like, you know what, the whole reason why we have this desire we have the void inside our heart that we want to fill, is because we are created in God's image. Like, he wants someone to love, and we want something to love too. And so if we don't love him, then we're gonna love other stuff. And if we don't put him first, we're gonna put other stuff first. Because he created us, he created that void for him, and only he can fill, because he knows what will make us feel love most is to be loved by him, to be loved by a loving God who unconditionally loves them, no matter how bad they are, no matter how sinful they are. He still can love us, and he can be the one who changes us. His love can change us for the better. There are love that will change us for worse. That is loving stuff other than him. And so I'm like, oh my God, it just like come together. And then so I did this slide, I put it together, and so I pieced stuff together that I thought about and I researched about, and here it is. I don't know if it's helpful, but to me at least it was a time where I can organize my thoughts. And so I did it, and regardless of the result, I think even though either it was decently made or it wasn't, but either way, I believe that my God is good, and he wanted me to do this for some reason, I don't know, but that he will use it somehow for his glory. And